It begins with stillness, not the calm of peace, but the quiet before an inevitable break. A silence that doesn't beg to be filled. It waits, watches. It measures. There's a man in the room. He says nothing. He moves little, but the air shifts around him. Not because he's loud, but because he doesn't need to be. People feel his presence and begin to arrange themselves accordingly. That is predator energy. It does not announce itself. It pulls others into orbit without a single demand. And most people never see it coming. Most people move with the crowd, think with the crowd, and react with the crowd. They speak to be heard. They chase to be chosen. They need the illusion of approval before they feel secure. But winners, real winners, operate differently. They think like predators. They don't seek permission. They don't beg for clarity. They don't wait for momentum. They create it. The world reacts to them. Most people ignore this divide between the predator and the prey. They assume success is about effort, consistency, or skill. But the truth, the uncomfortable truth is this: success begins in the frame. And predators frame the world to fit them. Nietzsche once wrote, "He who cannot obey himself will be commanded." This is the foundation. Predator psychology isn't about aggression, it's about command. And the first person you must command is yourself. Here's the first principle. When comfort offers itself, retreat. Predators don't feed at the same table as prey. Why? Because comfort is camouflage. It numbs your instincts. It tells you you've arrived before you've even begun. Most people reach a glimpse of success and immediately soften. They celebrate, they indulge, they signal. But predators are different. When things get easier, they become colder, sharper, quieter. They don't eat first. They observe first. Cut the impulse to indulge early. Remove the need to be seen. Incise the part of you that wants to be accepted. Withdraw from the crowd's rhythm. That's where control begins. Think about how the average person responds to validation. A compliment makes them talk more. A reward makes them slow down. An invitation makes them feel grateful. All of these are predictable. All of them create vulnerability. But you don't. A true predator receives praise like it's irrelevant. Because it is. You weren't moving for applause. You were moving for position. Most people can be tamed with attention. You can't. Here's how it shows up. You're in a room where someone tries to charm you. Smile. Nod once. Say little. Let them speak. Let them try. Because the more they talk, the more they reveal. And the less you talk, the more they wonder. You're in a negotiation. The average person makes concessions to avoid tension. You don't. You let the silence do the cutting. You let the discomfort speak for you. Because what you withhold is more powerful than what you give. You're tested. Someone tries to provoke you. You don't react. Because reaction is payment. You don't pay with emotion. You charge for it. They don't expect you to withhold. And that's why it works. Most people believe they must act to show value. You understand that restraint is value. Your silence isn't absence. It's dominance. Your lack of response is not indecision, it's precision. This is the psychology of the winner. Predators don't rush. They set traps. They create uncertainty. They leverage time. Why? Because every second that passes in silence forces the other side to imagine what you're thinking, and people fear what they can't predict. Here's the truth. The more they try to interpret you, the more you control the frame. You don't need to impress anyone. You let the environment speak about you. Your posture, your pace, your unwillingness to explain yourself, they all do the work. Now ask yourself, What happens when you walk into a room and say nothing? What happens when you let others carry the weight of filling the silence? What happens when you offer no reaction to their attempts at control? You become the mirror. You show them who they are without ever saying a word, and that reflection either makes them cautious or makes them desperate. Either way, you win. Subscribe now if this is the frame you want to move with, because we're only getting started. Tactics are not performed, they're embodied. When you think like a predator, your smallest movements carry strategic weight. You don't fidget, you don't over-explain, you don't chase. You allow others to arrive, but you never walk toward the center. Because you are the center. Let's break down how that plays out. You're in a negotiation. Most people panic in silence. They fill the air with offers, excuses, compromises. But you, wait. You sit in that tension. You increase it. Not out of malice, but out of control. The longer you wait, the more power you hold. The more they fear losing the deal, the more they reveal. You're at a dinner with peers. Someone challenges you. The prey defends themselves. The predator watches, listens, lets them speak. And when it's time to speak back, it's one sentence. Quiet. Final. Not to win the crowd, but to end the conversation. Because dominance doesn't shout, it closes doors without noise. In everyday conversation, you say less than you know. Why? Because mystery expands your influence. They don't know what you're thinking. They don't know what you'll do. And that uncertainty makes them adjust. Here's the rule. If they're adjusting to you, you're winning. Let them try to impress you. Let them ask questions. Let them feel the weight of your stillness. People anticipate what they fear. They respect what they can't define. It's not charm that makes them remember you. It's your restraint. And here's where the second law comes in. Consistency is dominance. Predators hunt patterns, not moments. Anyone can act composed once. Anyone can withdraw once. But predators aren't reacting, they're operating from a code. They don't shift based on the room. They create the tone of the room. Over time, this creates a reputation, a myth, a sense of presence that travels before you speak. Think of the lion. It doesn't need to growl to be dangerous. Its pattern does the work. Everyone knows it won't be provoked. It won't be rushed. It moves when it decides, and that decision is final. You don't return to normal after a moment of dominance. You redraw the map. People begin to treat you differently. They speak with more precision. They test less. They offer more. Why? Because they don't want to feel that silence again. They don't want to be in that losing frame again. You don't negotiate boundaries, you imprint them. Here's the shift. Most people adjust their standards to preserve relationships. Predators adjust relationships to preserve their standards. And over time, that consistency becomes your brand. People know what you allow. More importantly, they know what you don't. You become predictable in principle, but unpredictable in method. They know where your lines are, but they never know how you'll enforce them. That tension creates reverence. Now ask yourself, when someone disrespects you, what do you do? Do you explain yourself? Do you raise your voice? Do you plead for understanding? Or do you withdraw the privilege of access? Because once they feel the absence of you, they understand. Words are unnecessary. Explanation is noise. Access is currency, and you never spend it on those who don't know the cost. This is long-game psychology. You're not trying to win one interaction. You're training the entire ecosystem to treat you with precision. That's how predators operate. They're not emotional. They're aware. They don't punish, they restructure. If someone crosses a line, The predator doesn't argue. He disappears. He redirects. And in that void, people confront themselves. Control is not reaction. It's configuration. You don't try to manage people. You manage conditions. Environment matters. Tone matters. Consistency matters more than intensity. The predator is not always the most aggressive, but he's always the most certain. You don't have to dominate every room. You dominate your frame, and the room moves around you. This isn't arrogance. This is discipline. You don't assume you're superior. You simply don't allow inferiority to dictate your rhythm. Understand this. The more consistent you are, the less you need to explain. Words are for the uncertain. Movement is for the decided. So, when someone asks you a loaded question, pause. When someone expects a certain reaction, give them nothing. When someone tries to bait you into emotions mile and disappear. Over time, this becomes instinct. You don't need to calculate how to respond. Your default is non-reactivity. Your discipline becomes reflex. Your silence becomes legend. The world begins to learn. You don't push him. You don't test him. You don't assume he'll explain himself, because he never does. Think of how much energy most people waste on trying to be understood. They post, they argue, they plead. You say nothing, and yet they understand you more than anyone else in the room. That's predator psychology. If you're building this kind of presence, subscribe now, because those who get this change rooms without speaking. You don't chase the moment, you shape the environment. Predators don't just win, they redefine the terrain until winning is inevitable. You've shifted already. You've started thinking less like someone trying to succeed and more like someone designing the rules of success. That's the transformation. Because here's the truth. You don't just move through the world. You become the world others must move through. This is the essence of predator psychology. Identity is gravity. You stop measuring yourself by others' reactions and start controlling how those reactions are formed. You don't fit in, you set the standard. You're not an option, they adjust their choices based on your presence. Think about it. How many people wake up and immediately look outward? They check approval, they scan opinions, they study responses. That's prey thinking. Winners, real winners, begin inward. They calibrate themselves first, they define their state, and then move outward with that weight. They don't seek energy, they project it. That's how predators operate. It's not about being the loudest. It's about being the most certain. Most people are trying to be liked. You're trying to be remembered. Most people fear rejection. You invite it. Because rejection filters the weak. It sharpens your frame. It strengthens the signal. You're not diluted by attempts to appeal to all. You're defined by the fact that not everyone qualifies. That's the new lens. You're not reacting. You're rewriting the rules. Let others speak in circles. Let them bend to avoid discomfort. You walk through discomfort like it's nothing. Because control isn't avoiding the storm. It's walking through it dry. This is where you start building myth. Now, when your name is mentioned, there's pause. Now, when you enter the room, the temperature shifts. Now, when they speak of you, they use terms like calculated, unshaken, dangerous. Why? Because you're not erratic. You're anchored. Your moves are deliberate. Your rejections are clean. Your silences speak louder than their best arguments. You've removed the need to convince. You only command. Let's look deeper at the psychology of winners. Winners don't spend time trying to change opinions. They shape outcomes. They don't overinvest in people who don't match their standards. They withdraw without warning, and in that absence, People learn. You are not accessible. You are not reactive. You are strategic. Every interaction is measured. Every word is chosen. Every movement has weight. You say no without apology. You disappear without explanation. You walk away from what doesn't honor your direction because your path isn't built through approval, it's built through alignment. You don't chase peace, you bring order. That's why your silence cuts. That's why your boundaries sting. Because most people have never encountered someone who doesn't need them. They're used to flattery. You give precision. They're used to ego battles. You offer clarity. And once they've tasted that, once they've stood in front of something unshakable, they never forget it. You're not just building strategy, you're building presence. And presence leaves residue. Even after you're gone, they act differently. They speak differently. Because your standard stays in the room long after your voice goes quiet. You've become the correction. No announcements, no explanations, just a calibrated refusal to engage below your line. That's legacy. You're not chasing followers. You're becoming a North Star, something people adjust toward without ever touching. And the ones who can't, they fade. That's the price of clarity. Not everyone follows, but those who do follow with loyalty, with intensity, with respect. Because you didn't ask for it, you earned it through consistency. Like this video if you're building that kind of gravity. Because this isn't about ego, it's about edge. It's about moving through the world as the unmoved mover. The more you embody this, the less effort it takes. You don't have to remind people who you are. They already feel it.